Welcome to our channel, all friends. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to stay update for new videos. Thanks. Let's start new video. Mother, do you know that Uncle Bashir is looking for a girl to marry again? I broke the news to Mother as soon as I entered the house. Mother looked at me angrily and said, "Beware if you ever mention that old man's name again. At 80 years old, he has no shame. But why have you become so shameless that you keep mentioning that old man all the time and are after him?" I looked at Mother's face and said, "Mother, because I'm interested in marrying that old man. I can't live this life of poverty. And on top of that, the dreams you're building of marrying me off to Armin, I won't let them come true under any circumstances." I looked at Mother in anger, and Mother took off her slipper and threw it at me, saying, "Don't you have any shame talking so boldly in front of your mother? Do young girls look good talking about their marriage like this? And I don't know what you see in that old man. Haven't you seen how he changes wives like clothes?" Mother's anger had reached the sky. "Mother, I know he only keeps young girls as wives for a short time, but look at how he changes those girls' lives in that short period. If I marry that old man Bashir for a short time, just think, our lives will change. How long will we live this life of poverty? Ever since Father left this world, it feels like only starvation has become a part of our lives. You went to Aunt Shanaz's house to ask for help, didn't you? Tell me, what help did she give you?" I stood in front of Mother with my hands on my hips, and Mother averted her gaze because I knew that, as always, Aunt Shanaz would have sent Mother back empty-handed today too. "Tell me, what did Auntie give you?" I asked indignantly, and Mother said, "Your aunt doesn't have anything either. When they have something, they help us. Now I can't force them to help me, can I?" Hearing Mother's words, I laughed and said, "Mother, it's been almost 2 years since Shamshad brother went to Dubai. Auntie's house is built, their lifestyle has changed, but their crying in front of you hasn't stopped. We can't even expect Auntie to come to our funeral, and you keep going to her door repeatedly to ask for help, and you come back empty-handed every time. How long will you shamelessly keep asking Auntie for help?" I said everything truthfully in anger, and Mother got even angrier than me and said, "So what do you want? That I marry you off to that 80-year-old man just because he has a lot of money? You'll know when he divorces you and throws you out of the house then. How many wives had he left by now? Who knows?" Mother sat on the cot, wiping the sweat from her brow, and I sat at Mother's feet. "Mother, 6 months, 10 months, a year. However many days I stay in his house, I will eat well, dress well. I'll get a large sum written as dowry at the time of the nikah. So after the divorce, I won't return empty-handed. With money in hand, we'll live a good life. Besides, in this small house with this poverty, who will offer a proposal for our family? Do you really think paternal aunt will come with Armin's proposal? That paternal aunt who, after Father's death, comes to meet us only on Eid with a sour face, will she bring her son's proposal for me? Why do you have such hopes?" I wanted to remove the idea of Armin from Mother's heart, because I knew very well that paternal aunt would never bring her son's proposal to our house. She had many heirs. She would only come on Eid with a sour face, and that, too, just so she could show her face to her deceased brother on the Day of Judgment. Otherwise, she had no sympathy for me or any concern for Mother. Armin wouldn't even deign to step inside our house. He'd stay in his car and call paternal aunt out after 5 minutes. Despite seeing all this, Mother, I don't know why, still felt as if paternal aunt would uphold the relationship and marry off her orphan niece. "Mother, don't you see how disdainfully paternal aunt looks at us? She deliberately didn't invite us to Rakshanda's wedding and later lied, saying it was a simple wedding, while you and I both know how grandly paternal aunt celebrated her only daughter's wedding." Hearing my words, tears welled up in Mother's eyes. Wiping her tears slowly, she said, "What can I do, my daughter? After your father left, these are the only few relatives I have hope from. If even they don't come to my aid, who will? That's all I think about. However, she is, your paternal aunt is your father's sister. Who knows, maybe she'll have mercy on our condition." Hope's lamps were still burning in Mother's eyes. I angrily slammed my head and said, "Mother, neither will they have mercy on us, nor will a proposal come. And waiting for Armin's proposal, I don't know about your hopes, but my youth will definitely pass by. The opportunity that is about to come won't come either. Farida was saying that Bashir's wife is looking for a match for him. They need a young and healthy good girl because Bashir likes healthy girls. If you agree, then through Farida, put in my proposal, Mother. I have no objection to marrying that 80-year-old old man. Mother immediately shook her head in refusal and said, absolutely not. You are my only daughter. Even if my circumstances aren't good, I don't want to get rid of you like a burden from my shoulders. I will talk to your paternal aunt myself and ask for Armin's proposal. Mother set aside her shawl and went towards the bathroom to wash her face, and I kept looking at Mother angrily. I knew very well what paternal aunt's answer would be, but I don't know what hopes Mother had that refused to be shattered. I decided not to argue further with Mother, thinking that paternal aunt wasn't going to agree anyway. Then, as night fell, Mother called paternal aunt. They exchanged pleasantries, and as soon as Mother brought up Armin's proposal for me, paternal aunt became furious. From the other end, she lashed out at Mother and said, I come to meet you out of respect for my deceased brother's widow. And you've set your sights on my young son. Don't you have any shame? My son is educated, capable, and wealthy. What shortage of girls does he have that I would ask for your Sawara's hand? Whatever came to paternal aunt's mind, she kept saying, and then hung up the phone. All of Mother's hopes shattered with a crash, and she started crying bitterly. I let her shed tears because this had been her dream for years. She was bound to feel pain. She kept crying and soaking her pillow all night, but I said nothing. However, the next day, when we both, mother and daughter, sat opposite each other for breakfast, I told Mother, Farida's sister will come home today, so you talk to her. I want to marry Bashir. This is my final decision. This time, Mother didn't reply. She remained completely silent. Perhaps she also understood that in the lives of us poor people, there is no place for dreams. In the afternoon, Farida came to Mother to pick up her clothes, which Mother stitched to help us make ends meet. I looked at Farida and signaled Mother with my eyes to talk about the proposal. Mother hesitated for a while, then said, Farida, I heard that Bashir's wife is looking for a girl for him again. Farida said, yes, sister, actually, Bashir just divorced a wife. So there's an empty spot. You know that old man considers it his duty to have 4 wives. So his wife came to me asking if I knew any young and healthy good girls. Now, where do I keep finding young girls repeatedly? Bashir needs a girl every 6 months or a year. You know how he always keeps young girls in his nikah. Farida said with a mocking laugh. His feet are hanging in the grave, but look at his desires. I'm surprised by his first wife, who doesn't object to this at all. Instead, she goes out looking for girls for her husband herself. Farida touched her ears in an act of disbelief, and I again gestured to Mother to start talking. Mother hesitated for a while, then said, Farida, no good proposals are coming for our Sawara, nor are our circumstances good. I'm thinking that if you talk to them, I want to offer Sawara's hand for Bashir. Mother uttered the words with great difficulty, and Farida's sister completely jumped. Are you out of your mind, Sarah? Why are you handing over a young and beautiful girl to that old man? I've heard he's very flamboyant. Everyone knows he doesn't keep any wife for long. He changes wives within a year. Why do you want to ruin your daughter's fate with your own hands? Wait for some time. If it's Allah's will, a good proposal will come. Farida's sister tried to explain to Mother, and Mother started crying. She said, what reliance is there on my life or death? Let her depart from this world before my eyes. If she lives a few good days, I will also be happy. In this house, there are even fasts from food and drink. It would be good if she saw some good days at Bashir's house for a while. And even if there is a divorce, it's fine. With the dowry money, we will manage somehow. At Mother's last words, Farida seemed to understand the situation. She nodded her head and said, your point is right. That old man won't keep your Sawara for more than a year either. If the dowry is good, then Sawara's future will certainly improve. Okay, I'll talk. Farida was well aware of our financial situation, which is why she agreed. 2 days later, she came to our house with Bashir's wife. When Bashir's wife saw me, she immediately agreed to the proposal and said, Sawara is very young and pretty. Her health is good, and her physique is also excellent. Bashir will like her very much. Hearing such a thing from that woman, I was astonished. It felt as if she wasn't looking for a wife for her husband, but a daughter-in-law for her son. Looking at me, there was a slight smile on her face and admiration in her eyes. Then Bashir's wife placed 5,000 rupees in my hand, and my eyes widened in surprise. It had been a long time since I had seen so many banknotes together. Mother spoke to Bashir's wife and asked about the amount of the dowry. She replied that they would set whatever dowry Mother suggested, as they had no objection. Mother immediately said 200,000 rupees. I thought she would instantly refuse, and Mother had expected her to negotiate for a lower amount. But she said, "All right, from our side, the dowry will be 500,000 rupees." Hearing this, Mother almost fainted. I myself was looking at the woman in disbelief. After she left, Mother asked Farida, "She's not lying, is she?" Farida shook her head in denial and said, "No, sister. That old man has a lot of money. He just wants to enjoy himself. That's why he keeps marrying again and again. At least, that's what I think. You get ready, the nikah will be in 2 days." With that, Farida also left. With those 5,000 rupees, Mother did some shopping and prepared for the nikah. 2 days later, Bashir and his wife came to our house with witnesses, and my nikah was performed simply, followed by my rukhsati, departure to the husband's home. Bashir's wife took my hand and led me into their large house, settling me in a room like a bride. She said, "From today, this is your room. Your job is to keep Bashir happy and agree to everything he says. If he says it's day, it's day, and if he says it's night, it's night. Never refuse him for anything. Understood?" I nodded in agreement at Bashir's first wife's words, and she left the room. A little later, 80-year-old Bashir entered the room, humming something, and my heart began to pound. In my enthusiasm, I had made the decision, but now I was nervous. I didn't have any very special dreams about marriage, but I never thought my marriage would be to an 80-year-old man like this. I had simply made this decision out of frustration with my circumstances, and now I had to live with it. I had known Bashir for quite some time. He lived in our neighborhood. He was 80 years old, but his limbs were perfectly fine, and he walked around quite well. For a long time, it was well known about him that he was very fond of marrying, especially young girls. At that time, I used to think how anyone could give their young daughter to such an old man. But when a person is troubled by circumstances, perhaps they make such decisions, because I too had made this decision out of desperation with my situation. No one knew why Bashir married so many times or why he kept young wives, and the entire neighborhood was also greatly surprised that Bashir's first wife herself used to look for girls for him. How could any woman find a co-wife for herself? Everyone praised Bashir's wife's courage, saying that very few women had such fortitude. After meeting Bashir's wife, I felt that she was a very good woman who had perhaps controlled her own heart to please her husband. When Bashir came into the room, he first took something out of the cupboard, put it in his mouth, and then sat down near me. He gave me a wedding gift and forcibly began to get close to me. His closeness was disturbing me, but I had already married him, and I didn't have the courage to refuse, so I silently gave myself over to him. And then I realized that the 80-year-old man was no less than a young man. On the very first night of our marriage, he made me realize that he was a complete man. He also praised my beauty and gave me my right. In the morning when I came out after bathing and stood in front of the mirror, he again came close to me, chewing something, and said, "Listen to me, Sawera. I want children from you quickly." Hearing him, I was surprised. I turned and looked at him because he wasn't childless. He had 4 daughters from his first wife, and I didn't know about the children from his other wives. So I looked at him in surprise, and he took my wet hair in his hands and then, coming close to me, said, "I have 4 daughters from my first wife, Shahzadi. I desire a son. I am a millionaire, and I want to have an heir when I die. And for that heir, I keep marrying again and again. Until now, none of my wives have been able to give me a son. If you give me a son, I will bathe you in gold. I will never divorce you for the rest of your life. In fact, I will give you a higher status in this house than even Shahzadi." Bashir told me the real purpose of his marriages, and I just kept looking at him with my mouth open. I didn't even know that he didn't have a son and was longing for one. Now I understood why he was marrying again and again even at this age. Bashir said, I choose young girls so that they get pregnant quickly. I have no shortage of money. You will get whatever you want, but I want a son. As he said the last part, Bashir's tone suddenly became harsh. The gentleness of the night had vanished, and I felt a strange sting in his eyes and a sense of fear. Bashir left the room and I huddled into myself. A little later, my co-wife, meaning Shahzadi, came into the room and looking at me said, Bashir must have told you that he wants a son. Until now, no wife has been able to give Bashir a son. If you give him a son, you will surely be fortunate. Bashir had created a huge fuss after the birth of my 4 daughters because I didn't have a son. He wanted to divorce me, and I was terrified of divorce because I had 4 daughters, and I was worried about their future if I got divorced. That's when I myself gave Bashir permission to marry again, but he didn't have a son from his second wife either. Then I had to arrange his 3rd marriage, but still no son, so then I arranged a 4th marriage. But you know what? Perhaps a son is just not written in Bashir's destiny. He kept having daughters with every wife, and he kept divorcing them. By now, he has divorced approximately 6 to 7 girls in this manner. If you also have a daughter, he will divorce you too. But if it's a son, then consider your fortune to be greatly enhanced. Shahzadi told me the entire story while helping me get ready. For the first time, I saw sorrow in Shahzadi's eyes. The woman who laughed and smiled in front of the whole world, happily searching for wives for her husband, was in reality a broken and shattered woman from within, worried about her daughter's future, and that's why she was tolerating her husband's excesses. Hearing Shahzadi's words, I started crying and said, if I have a daughter, will he divorce me along with my daughter? I hadn't even thought that I could have children with Bashir. In my eyes, he was an 80-year-old man who perhaps wasn't even capable of being a father. Hearing my words, Shahzadi took a deep breath and said, yes, absolutely. If it's a daughter, he will divorce you. I asked in surprise, can an 80-year-old man become a father? For a man of Bashir's age to become a father would be nothing short of a miracle. Hearing my words, Shahzadi laughed and said, haven't you seen him putting something in his mouth day and night? He eats some special thing due to which his strength has not diminished to this day, and he has left every young wife only after making her pregnant. At Shahzadi's words, I realized that when my husband came into the room last night, he had taken something out of the cupboard and eaten it, and then he had eaten the same thing when he woke up in the morning. If I could make that thing disappear, then I would never get pregnant. I didn't mention this to Shahzadi, but as soon as she left, I searched the wardrobe. However, one part of the wardrobe was locked and wouldn't open despite my efforts. Now, strange thoughts began to flood my mind. If I became pregnant and had a daughter, my life would be completely ruined, and so would my child's. Now I had to get my hands on that thing somehow. What was it that gave an 80-year-old man so much strength? A week passed in this struggle, and I still hadn't found that thing. Then another 15 days went by, and I discovered that I was expecting. This news was like a doomsday for me. The very thing I wanted to avoid had happened. My 80-year-old husband had made me pregnant. I was in a terrible state from crying. When my mother came to visit me, I told her everything. And hearing it, my mother also became very worried. Now, along with me, she was also worried about my unborn child, because it was clear that I would have a daughter too. If every previous wife of Bashir had a daughter, then surely I too was destined to have a daughter. Because whether it's a son or a daughter, it depends on the man, not the woman. Each day was becoming difficult to pass, and then one day, by chance, Bashir forgot to lock his wardrobe. I immediately searched his wardrobe and found the thing that had enabled him to maintain his strength all this time. And I was amazed to see that it was a very cheap, small thing that had transformed his life. They were pumpkin seeds tied in a bag, and my husband would eat those seeds day and night. Seeing them, I clasped my head. If only I had found them earlier, I would have hidden them somewhere and never let my husband eat those seeds, and I wouldn't have gotten pregnant. But now the water had passed over the head. It was too late. I became silent, and time passed like this. It was the 5th month of my pregnancy when Bashir took me to the hospital and asked the doctor to perform an ultrasound to tell him if I was having a daughter or a son. During the ultrasound, I was in a terrible state from fear, and then the nurse informed me that I was having a daughter. Hearing this, my husband immediately handed me 500,000 rupees and then divorced me, throwing me out of the house. I returned home. I had the money, but my heart wept tears of blood. I didn't know how I would live my life with my daughter. I wished I had thought earlier about what would happen if I had a child, but at that time, I hadn't considered it much. In my eyes, an 80-year-old man was incapable of anything. Bashir married another young girl just a few days later. Days passed like this. When 9 months were complete, I gave birth to a child, and surprisingly, I had a son. The doctor congratulated me and placed my son in my lap. I couldn't believe it. I returned home with my baby, but I told no one that I had a son. Instead, Mother and I hastily sold our old house and rented a new place elsewhere. With the money received from the dowry, Mother further expanded her tailoring and embroidery work, and we began to make a living. Even today, Bashir doesn't know that I had a son, and I will never tell him, because he longed for a son. And if he finds out now that I gave birth to a son, he will snatch my son from me. I want him to keep longing for a son his entire life, because for the sake of a son, he has ruined the lives of many girls to this day, especially his first wife and daughters. I don't know if what I did is right or wrong, but I do know that people like Bashir should not be encouraged. Otherwise, they will become a cancer for society. If every man prioritizes only and solely a son, where will the daughters of this society go?